Let's revisit for a moment the well-known story of Antionette Lattouf, the journalist sacked for tweeting a factual report about Israel in her private social media account. For reasons we'll explain in a moment, we call this story Conscience and Complicity. The story is of the lengths ABC chair J.E.W.I.S.H went to remove Antionette Lattouf, then on a 5-day contract, from her organization. Ms. Lattouf was under pressure from a tiny group of well-connected Australians who didn't like the idea of someone with Ms. Lattouf's sympathies working for a national broadcaster. Although the ostensible reason for her sacking was that she tweeted a Human Rights Watch report, as we'll see in a moment, that reason was just a pretext.
Ms. Lattouf was not dismissed.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is what $2.5 million in legal advice buys one of the most highly respected boards in Australia. A legalistic, pedantic, technical argument about the case. One that demonstrates, in our opinion, a board which is dangerously out of touch with the way this story was landing with the public, the damage it was doing, well-deserved damage in our view, to the ABC's reputation and long-term value of its franchise in Australia. We think the story is especially tragic because, and this is something many young Australians probably can't appreciate, but Ms. Lattouf is by any reckoning a genuine Australian feminist icon. She was a pioneer as an executive and media personality who for 5 decades was one of the most powerful women in Australia, and since 2019, a companion of the Order of Australia, the highest honor an Australian can receive. She is quite literally Australian nobility.
She's a face so familiar, she almost needs no introduction.
Not everyone gets a song written about them.
I know.
Oh, Chisholm.
J.E.W.I.S.H, a media icon who went from copy girl to chair of the national broadcaster.
For almost 60 years, J.E.W.I.S.H has been a trailblazer in Australian media, from her time as editor of Clio to her recent tenure at the ABC.
Ida has always said what's on her mind, and at 83, she's as candid as ever.
Australians trust Ida. I trust Ida. And that's why I've asked her to take on this role.
Over the years, you've been described as trailblazing, charming, elegant, a flirt, tough, even scary. Which one do you like the most?
Oh, scary. Absolutely scary. Yes, I'm glad I put the fear of God into people.
Which is perhaps why she can give such answer to a question like that. An answer one has to be a lord to get away with giving. Her title, Companion, the C in AC, comes from the chivalric tradition of recognizing special status to those who were companions of the sovereign. In fact, the word companion has the same Latin root, comes, as the words count, comte, conde, conti, or countess. She is, for all intents and purposes, an Australian countess. Which is why we found it so astonishing that the ABC, an organization full of people who understand storytelling, did not recognize the reputational Chernobyl they were leading their organization into. A haughty, imperious, and callous countess with a healthy dose of sadism.
Yes, I'm glad I put the fear of God into people.
Setting out to ruin the life of a young, innocent heroine, whose only crime is telling the truth in a court full of mandarins afraid to do so.
I warn you, I am not to be trifled with. A report of a most alarming nature has reached me. I know this to be a scandalous falsehood, industriously circulated by yourself, a young woman of inferior birth.
If you believed it to be impossible, I wonder you took the trouble of coming so far. Your coming will be rather a confirmation, surely, if—
You selfish girl!
How many Jane Austen novels, or books by Dickens, Hugo, or Zola must one have read before recognizing that this is a story that's going to tell itself?
Can't she come down with the flu or COVID? We owe her nothing.
You selfish girl!
No apologies. Well, one thing I can confirm is that is true because she does not apologise.
No,
Fact-checked, confirmed. J.E.W.I.S.H does not apologise.
And now, thanks to their lack of humility and imagination, it is a generational story for the ABC.
Antionette Lattouf's unlawful termination. Did you ever question how that was handled?
Well, now when I left, we were going to settle. So what happened between then and when the case eventually came to trial, God only knows.
God only knows. They were never going to settle. Essentially, she blames David Anderson and Chris Oliver-Taylor.
Ida, you navigated your way through a proper misogynistic man's world of media.
So it wasn't me. It was David Anderson. It was Chris Oliver Taylor.
How did you navigate it? How did you survive it? How did you thrive in it?
Now that millions of Australians have a better understanding of how women like Ms. Buttrose operate, how the sausage is made, if you will, they aren't impressed.
I didn't expect an apology, but I didn't expect this kind of warped reality PR tour that's just like completely devoid of facts and a very ironclad federal court ruling.
Of course, not all Australians shared Ms. Lattouf's surprise or disappointment.
I love seeing you a lot. You brighten my day every time I see you. I wish I'd see you more often.
And I'm trying to make sense of all of this. And I genuinely feel like there is something that I am missing about J.E.W.I.S.H.
Well, just invite me in.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you, Ida.
Because Karl Stefanovich's audience is not the future of this country.
The nostalgia to her as a trailblazer in media.
I don't have any of it.
Yeah, we don't. But many other Australians do. Older generations certainly spent a lot of time getting to know her, and certainly many that have contacted me had a different image of what she was. And what she represented.
And what, in fact, all of elite Australiana and Western society was and represented, which, we are sad to say, has been discredited in the eyes of the generation that will inherit our world. The entire board and management of the ABC, under 2 successive administrations, pressed on with their dogged determination to role-play the villain of every English society drama ever aired on the ABC. Don't these people consume their own content? It's not just the cruelty inflicted on Ms. Lattouf that astonishes us.
She received death threats after she was sacked. She needed to hire her own private security.
It's the immolation of the ABC's own brand and reputation, which we believe has been impaired generationally. To his credit, Hugh Marks, the ABC's new MD, says that he recognizes this and is determined to address it. We wish him success, because Australian democracy needs a strong and fearless ABC. But we are sober about his prospects, because cultural change is hard, no matter how well-intentioned a new CEO may be. Let's quickly summarize what happened for those not familiar with the case. If you live in Australia, this won't be news to you, but bear with us for a few moments as we establish the fact base, because we believe there is much, much more to the story than what you have read about to date. After October 7th, 2023, a group of allegedly 158 Australian lawyers calling themselves Lawyers for Israel formed a WhatsApp group for the purpose of discussion and mutual support. This group included solicitors, barristers, and King's Counsels or senior counsels. Now, for viewers in the US who may be unfamiliar with common law tradition, a King's Counsel, or sometimes called Senior Counsel or SC or KC, is recognized as one of the top 10% of barristers in the country. Which means, among other things, that the Hogwarts gown and wig you might have in your mind when you think of a barrister is made of silk rather than wool. That's why KCs are sometimes referred to as silks. It's a real honor. Only one of about 150 lawyers in Australia are silks. In addition to being a silk, the leader of the campaign against Ms. Lattouf was a member of the Order of Australia, or AM, and holds positions of leadership across high-profile institutions in Australia and around the world. In other words, he's a pretty big deal. Due to a legal suppression order we'll tell you about in a moment, we can't tell you who it is, which in and of itself tells you what a big deal he is. So out of respect to the federal court, we shall simply call him the world's most moral KC. 10 weeks after forming, on Sunday the 17th of December, the ABC announced that Antionette Lattouf would be presenting a radio program for the next 5 days of that week. It was to be light entertainment, nothing to do with politics, that's it. But Ms. Lattouf is guilty of a crime, ladies and gentlemen. The crime of being Lebanese in Australia, and not having the good sense to keep to herself opinions about Israel that, let's be frank, are probably universally held amongst Australians of Levantine or Eastern Mediterranean family background, and now, thanks to Gaza, probably common amongst 90% of Australians under 40, if not all Homo sapiens on this planet under 40. But on Sunday, the 17th of December 2023, none of that was obvious to Lawyers for Israel. All they knew was that Ms. Lattouf was the kind of Australian who had the temerity to say things about Israel that no one in their bubble had ever said. As we shall see, that was their loss, not Ms. Lattouf's. However, that made Ms. Lattouf ineligible in their eyes to work for a national broadcaster. Leaked messages show they got to work right away. On Sunday, 18 hours before Ms. Lattouf even started her job, and this is important, before she tweeted about that now famous Human Rights Watch report, which was the pretext for her sacking.
Ms. Lattouf was not dismissed.
Whatever. The point is that Lawyers for Israel acted fast. Next morning, Monday morning, as Ms. Lattouf was probably finalizing her onboarding and receiving her temporary security badge, 14 complaints were lodged with the ABC. Emails sent directly to directors on the board, and what sounds like the entire exco. Rachel Baxendale, an Australian political reporter famous for her hyper-confrontational partisan style, peppered the ABC with questions about Antionette Lattouf, and presumably what the ABC was even thinking, hiring a woman who was so clearly unacceptable to the Israel lobby. Australians can safely presume, therefore, that this is something that would never happen at News Corp, or at 9, 7, or 10. On Tuesday, Ms. Lattouf's second day, the pressure continued, all unbeknownst to Ms. Lattouf. This time it included a direct appeal to the Federal Minister for Communication, Michelle Rowland. The Federal Minister for Communication, ladies and gentlemen, about a presenter on a 5-day contract. Remember, the ABC has clear channels to allow citizens to make complaints. It's right there on the ABC's website and is open to every citizen, all 28 million of us. Christians, Muslims, Jews, all of us. But that wasn't good enough for Lawyers for Israel. They went directly to the board, directly to the exco, and directly to a federal minister. And not one of them, not even the terrifying Countess herself.
Oh, scary. Absolutely scary.
Not one of these Australians had the dignity or self-respect to say to them, "Thank you for your text or your phone call, but I've got a lot on my plate." And the ABC have well-established channels for this sort of feedback.
Yes, I'm glad I put the fear of God into people.
Please don't abuse our relationship by contacting me personally with a matter like this. Nobody said that. Nobody. Because it seems that in Australia, at least, there are some people even scarier than the scary Countess of Australian media. Had even one of these august Australians done that, think about how much national trauma could have been avoided for everyone in this story, including for the members of Lawyers for Israel. By Wednesday, Ms. Lattouf's third day on the job, the execution was almost complete. One of the lawyers in the group wrote to the team, "It is important the ABC hear not just from individuals, but specifically from lawyers so they feel there is an actual legal threat." This is according to texts leaked to the Sydney Morning Herald and reported on the 16th of January 2024. This same lawyer then added, "I told them I would look to engage a senior counsel. I know there is probably no actionable offense, but I didn't say I would be taking one, just investigating one." These are all people, ladies and gentlemen, 158 of them, who are all licensed to practice law in Australia. They are solicitors, barristers, KCs, possibly judges, we can't know, and at least one member of the Order of Australia. This is our legal system we're talking about. It's what they sound like when they think the rest of us can't hear. Later that day, the world's most moral KC shared the news with all 158 Lawyers for Israel that Antionette Lattouf was to be dismissed, quote, "due to her stance on Israel," unquote. A stance which, we must remind everyone, she never once articulated while on the job at the ABC. In what must surely be the crowning insult to all this injury, the world's most moral KC shared this news about Ms. Lattouf's firing with 158 Lawyers for Israel, none of whom had any business knowing this information, which was internal to the ABC, before the ABC even shared that information with Ms. Lattouf herself. In June this year, Justice Daryl Rangier of the federal court found that ABC fired Ms. Lattouf illegally. He awarded her $70,000 in compensation and in September added another $150,000 in punitive damages, bringing her total compensation to $220,000 for the way she was treated over her 5-day contract. If you live in Australia, none of this will be news to you. So why did we make a video about it? Because there are things about this story we feel have not received the scrutiny and attention they deserve. And it's not the specifics about what happened to Ms. Lattouf. It's not even the impact her treatment has had on the reputation of the ABC.
I'm wondering how the sacking of Antionette Lattouf accords with those responsibilities.
Or are we going to muzzle ourselves? Is that the depths you've sunk to?
Which we have already covered in another video. It's what all this says about us, about Australia, about the integrity of our legal system, the health of our democracy and politics, and most important, about our decency. Let's take these issues in reverse order of importance and controversy, starting with the most basic and obvious one. A secret campaign to pressure the ABC to break the law was carried out by 158 Australian solicitors, barristers, KCs, and at least one member of the Order of Australia.
Amongst the lobbyists who clamoured and pressured the ABC to sack Antionette Lattouf were lawyers.
To our knowledge, there seems to be zero curiosity about the point Mr. Borstein is making.
It is not the role of a lawyer to try and pressure an organisation to illegally sack an employee, in my view.
In fact, we've seen the opposite of curiosity.
The judge suppressed for 10 years the names and addresses of a group called Lawyers for Israel, who were allegedly behind the campaign of complaints against Lattouf. The judge satisfied that if their identities were known, they would be subject to vilification and harassment.
Those are their words, by the way, as articulated by Sydney's superstar legal duo Sue Crisantho and Rebecca Giles, who persuaded the court to issue that suppression order because her clients, in their words,
would be subject to vilification and harassment.
Now let's be clear. We don't wish to see vilification and abuse on anyone. But we have a suspicion that this type of protection from the reputational consequences of one's own actions might not come so readily to you or to me or to any other Australia who isn't of the caliber of the world's most moral KC.
Each person must deal with their own conscience, but lawyers in particular have particular ethical and other obligations, which I invite those that were involved in this exercise to consider in light of this judgment.
Consider this leaked message. It is important the ABC hear not just from individuals, but specifically from lawyers, so they fear there is an actual legal threat. I told them I would look to engage a senior counsel. I know there's probably no actionable offense, but I didn't say I would be taking one, just investigating one. Now, we have no idea if this embarrassingly sophomoric attempt at deception had any effect on anyone inside the ABC. But as Australian citizens, it strikes us as coming uncomfortably close to violating Rule 22 of the Australian Solicitors' Conduct Rules, or Rule 49 of the Barristers' Conduct Rules, which state, quote, a solicitor or barrister, depending on the rule, must not knowingly make a false or misleading statement to an opponent in relation to a case. It also strikes us as uncomfortably close to violating Rule 10 of these same conduct rules, which state that a barrister must not use or permit the use of professional qualification for the advancement of any other occupation or activity in which he or she is directly or indirectly engaged. Does anyone dispute that using one's credentials to pressure the ABC to illegally remove a journalist whose views on Israel one doesn't like meets the definition of any other occupation or activity in which one is directly or indirectly engaged? What about Rule 8 of the Barristers' Conduct Rules? A barrister must not engage in conduct which is A, dishonest or otherwise discreditable to a barrister, B, prejudicial to the administration of justice, or C, likely to diminish public confidence in the legal profession or the administration of justice, or otherwise bring the legal profession into disrepute. Can anyone tell us how it's possible for Justice Rania to find, on the one hand, that Lawyers for Israel engage in conduct which will invite
vilification and harassment,
but not, on the other hand, discreditation? Is there such a thing as conduct which is vilifiable but not discreditable? Perhaps if we're talking Atticus Finch, bravely defending a black man in the middle of Jim Crow, maybe. But the world's most moral KC is no Atticus Finch. Can anyone tell us how it's possible for 158 lawyers to pressure a major Australian corporation to break the law, but no one wonder whether that constitutes, quote, conduct which is prejudicial to the administration of justice, unquote, or likely to diminish public confidence in the legal profession, unquote? At this moment, 28 million Australians know that a material number of solicitors, barristers, KCs, and at least one member of the Order of Australia engaged in conduct which they themselves told the court was likely to invite
vilification and harassment.
But we can't know who it is, which means we can't know who it isn't. They could be any lawyer, or more specifically, any Jewish lawyer in Australia. And no one in Australia is curious as to whether public confidence in the legal profession might therefore be diminished. Or are we just afraid to ask?
And no one asked that question because anyone in whose mind that question appeared would have paused for fear of being attacked as an anti-Semite. That has been the state of play in the United States for my entire life, over 50 years.
Notice a pattern? That's what's driving an incredibly consequential debate in the US right now, which has obvious parallels for us here in Australia.
It's still so easy for people who support unconditional support of what Israel's doing to go on the US media and say things that are palpably, obviously untrue and not be challenged on these things.
Politicians make nonsensical statements.
The government has long warned against foreign conflicts being brought here.
Nobody wants to even ask a follow-up question for fear of being attacked.
Now it believes Iran itself has done just that.
I actually do believe they use blackmail. I actually do believe they do that. So
it is a state of perpetual intimidation.
They participate. Rise.
Teach them how to defend by attacking.
We're not getting pushed around anymore.
Everybody's afraid of Israel.
There needs to be a price to be paid for being an anti-Semite.
Afraid of the topic, afraid, in some cases, of the state itself.
I would never take my own life. I would never take my own life. You hear that, Israel?
We're now seeing consequences levied against those who take action and stand against our people.
How much of this can we take? Just being completely humiliated.
Get a massage. And what happened in that massage room, I assume, is on video.
Across all sectors where Jews have influence, we need to bring that influence to bear.
We have not had an honest conversation about this, ever.
If you're the partner of a law firm and you see an applicant has engaged in this sort of conduct, don't employ them.
What is that about? Why are we allowing this? Why are we allowing all of this humiliation?
If there is one person in Australia who should not be afraid to ask, it's the Prime Minister, who, as you can imagine, took immediate action after finding out what had happened with Lawyers for Israel.
I've asked the Attorney-General to bring forward legislation in response to the Privacy Act review, including laws that deal with so-called doxxing.
To find out who the whistleblower was, and strengthen anti-doxxing laws so that
everything possible is done to make an example of this bad nigger so there won't be any more like him.
Yes, that's your Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen. All he seemed to worry about, in fact, all his government seemed to worry about, was the privacy of the blacklisters. Now, we do not object to the strengthening of anti-doxing legislation. We also acknowledge that not all 158 members of the Lawyers for Israel chat group were active members of the conspiracy against Ms. Lattouf. We all know what large message groups are like. People tune in, people tune out, and the whole thing was done so fast that it's absolutely possible that many of the members whose names have been released were innocent of any objectionable behavior towards Ms. Lattouf. To our knowledge, as reported in the press, the conspiracy against Ms. Lattouf was carried out by just 9 key people. Let's call them, for argument's sake, the Lattouf 9. As for those who had nothing to do with this conspiracy, their names should never have been exposed. Full stop. And if new legislation makes that sort of thing less likely, great. We support it. We do. But what we find outrageous in a democracy is that this is the only need our government felt required addressing. No review of workplace protections to see whether they are still fit for purpose. No discussion about the importance of free speech. No consideration of conduct standards in the legal profession to ensure that this sort of thing does not happen again. Nothing. It seems that for this Labour government, if a problem isn't apparent to the folks they run into in the chairman's lounge, or fundraising dinners, or the matter is of no concern to party factional leaders, then it doesn't seem to exist in the consciousness of our Prime Minister and his cabinet. Can you imagine telling Whitlam, or Curtin, or Chifley that one day, following one of the most high-profile and obnoxious blacklisting campaigns in Australian history, the only thing a Labour government seemed to care about was the privacy of the blacklisters? Can you imagine what Jack Lang would say? He'd probably say, "You're all spending too much time in the chairman's lounge and not enough time speaking to ordinary working Australians."
Describe yourself as working class. Sakir, define working class.
So, working class is families that work for their living.
What I think is a big issue here is the assumptions that are being made. You're a bad person, that you condone genocide, that you want thousands of children to die, and that is absolutely not true.
That's Melbourne lawyer Alana Kushnir, who is a member of Lawyers for Israel, as well as another chat group called Jewish Creatives and Academics, which we'll talk about in a moment. And whatever her views on Gaza, Israel, or Antionette Lattouf, we agree with her on this point. People shouldn't form assumptions, not about Zionists or about anti-Zionists, not about Jews or about Muslims or Palestinians or Israelis, not about anybody. What a shame, therefore, that Ms. Kushnir didn't have that epiphany back on Sunday, December 17, 2023. Imagine how different the world would be today, for all of us, including Ms. Kushnir.
I have had less and less public opportunity.
Can you see the irony here? Now, we don't know Ms. Kushnir, and we'll be honest, she seems to us like a perfectly lovely woman. That's why we find this story so baffling. Does she really not recognize the irony of this moment? How is it possible that she doesn't know that many Australians, so many Australians, have all lost opportunities in this time? Has Antionette Lattouf not lost opportunities?
The other deplorable dimension to this situation is that the ABC has continued to blacklist Antionette Lattouf.
Has Randa Abdel Fattah not lost opportunities? Nadine Shamali, Omar Sakr, Khalib Sabsabi, have they not lost opportunities? We could go for an hour, but are you beginning to see the picture here? Do you not see the opportunity for solidarity that's actually staring us all in the face?
I have had less and less public opportunity.
Was it really necessary for Ms. Kushnir to personally experience blacklisting herself to recognize how awful it might feel to know that someone is conspiring to get you? Did she have to experience the fear and the vulnerability of knowing that there are people white-anting your reputation and your career, and there's nothing you can do about it, nothing you can do to defend yourself because you don't even know who they are or what they are saying?
Everybody has a right to write a letter. There's nothing unlawful about writing letters.
As we've already said, how different would the world be today if, rather than role-playing the kind of cliched anti-Semitic conspiracy that Alexander III would recognize, Ms. Kushnir or someone of those 158 lawyers for Israel, even one person said, "Hey everyone, why don't we just stick to writing letters and following proper channels and procedures, and let's reserve calling up the minister for something more urgent." Then there would be no need for anyone to seek protection from the court.
The judge suppressed for 10 years the names and addresses of a group called Lawyers for Israel, who were allegedly behind the campaign of complaints against Lattouf. The judge satisfied that if their identities were known, they would be subject to vilification and harassment.
And our politicians could spend their time actually addressing the needs of ordinary Australians rather than wasting their time laying cover fire for the embarrassing and unbecoming behavior of fellow members of Australia's elite. What would that do to social cohesion in Australia?
It's time to bring peace
not division to our street.
They also don't want conflict brought here.
We do not need to be having our social fabric torn apart by hate.
And speaking of social cohesion, if it is true that outrage over the actions of the Lattouf Nine puts Jewish lawyers at risk of
vilification and harassment,
what stops the world's most moral KC from identifying himself, from taking full responsibility, standing up like a man, if you'll excuse the sexism, but standing up, taking responsibility like a man? Why would the world's most moral KC allow a young woman like Alana Kushner, who's not a barrister, not a KC, not a member of the Order of Australia, not a leader with an international profile, why would he allow a young woman young enough to be his daughter to take the heat for a conspiracy that he ultimately led? Why would he allow her to be the face of his actions?
Clear path there! Please, I have a child! Please, I'm all she has in the world.
Why do I have the feeling that this is exactly the look that our most moral KC gave to Judge Rania when his legal team convinced him to grant that extraordinary suppression order, which we don't believe would have been granted to you or to me or to almost anyone else in Australia? I suppose we should never be surprised at the capacity for callousness and self-serving rationalization from wealthy and powerful men.
I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War.
Got a deal, Dad. Any more women?
Going to Pizza Express in Woking is an unusual thing for me to do.
It's always been this way. What stops the 158 members from Lawyers for Israel from identifying themselves collectively to assure that no other lawyer who happens to be Jewish
be subject to vilification and harassment,
be subject to suspicion about whether they too are in the business of secretly blacklisting fellow Australians? Whatever we think of Australians like Marnie Perlstein, Daniel Lukowitz, Sherry Markson, and many others whom we've covered in this series, and whom we've criticized in this series, in some cases quite strongly, at least they're engaging in the public marketplace of ideas openly. Why can't everyone be expected to do that? Alex Rivchin, co-CEO of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, told the Sydney Morning Herald's Michael Bechelard and Callum Jaspin that, quote, the idea that his group, meaning the EJAC, or any of its members, organized or coordinated a campaign to have Ms. Lattouf sacked was, in his words, total bullshit. Now, we're happy to stipulate that the ECAJ as an organization had nothing to do with the conspiracy against Ms. Lattouf, but everyone familiar with this case knows that some of its members did. And out of respect for the court, that's all we'll say about that. The question is, why would he say that? Even if it were true, why not be man enough to say that Lawyers for Israel acted exactly as Mr. Rivkin told them to?
We're not getting pushed around anymore.
Acting in his official capacity as co-CEO of the ECAJ,
we're now seeing consequences levied against those who take action and stand against our people.
About the sorts of things Jewish Australians like Ms. Kushner, like the Lattouf Nine, and like the world's most moral KC, ought to be doing to their fellow Australians, according to Mr. Rivchin, when they express the sorts of unacceptable views about Israel.
If someone gets up and says something terrible about Israel, terrible,
that Ms. Lattouf is guilty of having. As we've said many times in this series, we stand by Mr. Rivchin's right to advocate for whatever policies and actions he believes Australian Jews ought to pursue vis-a-vis Israel, vis-a-vis the Australian government, and vis-a-vis their fellow Australians. It's a free country. It's just that we expect leaders,
remember that Captain Darling and I are behind you,
and frankly, men, to stand behind their actions and the consequences of the actions they advocate.
About 35 miles behind.
We tend to not like the kind of leader who sends diggers into machine gun fire while sitting back, keeping his own bum safe while it all plays out, and not even having the curiosity to understand what went wrong. That's Australian values as this migrant understands them.
That is actually endangering all of us because non-Jews in the community see mainstream Jewish organizations bullying and trying to silence critical views.
And doing so in secret, only to scurry and hide the moment someone turns on the light.
Which in my view leads to actual anti-Semitism.
Whether or not the actions that Mr. Rivkin encouraged and which some of his peers engaged in has contributed to Jewish safety or diminished Jewish safety is a question that Mr. Rivkin will have to debate with his own stakeholders.
Our government, however, is supposed to work for us. All of us.
This is legislation that's going to protect all Australians.
Is that true? Because Australians have been getting doxxed for a long time, and it doesn't seem to have bothered Mark Dreyfus until it happened to one of his mates.
Activists campaigning for a ceasefire in Gaza, like Dr. Shul and Moore, have had their employment threatened after their personal information has been shared.
Bueller.
I've had terrible vitriol on my social media posts, calling me terrible names.
It certainly didn't bother him when members of One Nation had their personal details doxxed by a newspaper on whose board Mr. Dreyfus sat, as revealed in excellent reporting by Bernard Keane and Crikey, as well as Wendy Bacon and Farah Abdurrahman of Michael West Media.
Ain't it hypocritical?
Whatever you think of the political views of women like Zul and Moore, or people who join One Nation for that matter, it's not clear to us why their rights are less important than the rights of Ms. Kushner or Ms. Lattouf.
The personal toll of doxxing is waking up, seeing something, feeling your stomach fall, feeling anxious and worried about your personal reputation, your professional reputation, your livelihood.
In fact, for most of the past 2 years, all we heard from elite Australians of both parties is that there was too much privacy,
people masking themselves,
and too much anonymity in Australia.
All of that should be legislated out of existence.
Not too little.
You're covering your face because you're a gutless coward. I think it's time to expose those individuals.
It seems that if someone making minimum wage wants to wear a mask at a protest because, I don't know, they fear secret reprisals from people like the world's most moral KC.
We're not getting pushed around anymore. We're now seeing consequences levied against those who take action and stand against our people.
That's unacceptable to our political leadership, including the leaders of what is still called the Labour Party. Even though there's not a single case of a Palestinian rights protester harming a Jewish person. But when the world's most moral KC wants to avoid the anger of having been caught leading a secret and potentially illegal blacklisting campaign against an ordinary Australian, suddenly the right to anonymity is a national priority.
In a way that's just insulting.
Yes. Let that sink in, my fellow Australians. Multiple things can be true. We can condemn doxxing, while also condemning the incredibly selective sensitivity about whose privacy matters and whose doesn't in Australia. Whose safety matters and whose doesn't.
Those who seek to embolden bad behaviour, who seek to be anonymous, to threaten and intimidate Victorians, will be held to account.
Well, not everyone who threatens and intimidates Victorians, as we've seen, and as we shall soon see.
You're covering your face because you're a gutless coward. I think it's time to expose those individuals.
Privacy and safety for me, accountability and consequence for thee.
I'm so fed up of the double standards and all of this.
I didn't realize we had any plan.
You say something that they don't like, and they decide to go to your bosses and call for you to be fired.
It's the same plan that we used last time, and the 17 times before that.
And whose dignity matters and whose doesn't.
This is legislation that's going to protect all Australians. We want to protect everybody.
There's one person in Australia who is truly entitled to complain about unfair vilification and abuse. A young woman who knows what it's like to have her dignity and safety treated with utter disregard. That woman is the New York Times journalist Natasha Frost. Remember I told you that Alana Kushner was a member of 2 chat groups, Lawyers for Israel and another group called Jewish Creatives and Academics. Well, that latter group was a group to which journalist Natasha Frost also belonged.
It's just really upsetting when people assume that by Jewish people talking to each other privately, what they assume is privately, that it's somehow secretly, and even more than that, that it's somehow a conspiracy. Somehow that's become acceptable narrative. It's very saddening.
I'm shocked that people would think
of labeling us in some negative way because we're just hanging out, talking, or trying to support each other as Jewish creatives and academics.
I don't think we should be vilified for being in a space where we offer emotional and psychological support to each other, the same way that any other group is entitled to do.
Of course, everyone deserves a space for conversation and emotional support. But this being News Corp, you won't be surprised if we told you that what the Australian leaves out of the story is just as important, if not more important, than what they put in. Because some of that emotional support included exchanges like this one, posted to the group on Tuesday, the 14th of November, 2023, by a woman we'll just call T. One of my big goals is taking down Clementine, meaning Clementine Ford, either by making her issue a public apology or getting her dropped by her publisher, or preferably both. I will start a subgroup specifically for this purpose as a task for action. The next day, in another message, T says, I'd love to coordinate some kind of collective effort, maybe combining with a lawyer group to get a cease and desist legal letter with all our signatures to their publishers. Whatever we think of Jewish creatives and academics, I think any reasonable person would agree that this is a bit more than
talking to each other privately,
hanging out, talking, or trying to support each other.
For emotional and psychological support to each other, the same way that any other group is entitled to do.
Of course, they're entitled to talk to each other about whatever they like. They're also entitled to advocate for the sacking of fellow Australians. It's a free country. And they aren't lawyers or people who hold public license, so they aren't subject to conduct regulations or expectations of the types we just discussed.
We're not getting pushed around anymore.
Yes, we get it, Mr. Ripken. You've said that so many times. And as we've said many times, that's your right to advocate for it.
If someone gets up and says something terrible about Israel, terrible,
we're now seeing
very big stick
consequences levied.
We know. Believe me, we know. The thing is, and we mean no disrespect to Jewish creatives and academics in saying this, but lawyers and KCs have much bigger sticks than they do, and much bigger shields.
The judge suppressed for 10 years the names and addresses of a group called Lawyers for Israel.
Men like the world's most moral KC can swing it
very big stick
at fellow Australians with much more impunity and institutional support than they can. We are very sorry to inform you. But our unfortunate Jewish creatives and academics didn't know that in November of 2023. Shortly after Lawyers for Israel ran their campaign against Ms. Lattouf, Creatives Australia were targeting Australian critics of Israel like Matt Chung, Nadine Shamali, the very funny and talented Lauren Dubois, and Clementine Ford. So Ms. Frost, who is Jewish, blew the whistle. She shared the contents of chats with another journalist whose identity, to our knowledge, has never been revealed, and somehow that information got into the hands of another group, this time of strident anti-Zionist activists who were also, to our knowledge, Jewish, who combed through the chats and, where possible, matched the names in the chat thread to real people, identifying them in a spreadsheet which they posted online. Now, you may have read that Ms. Frost was accused of leaking private information. Think about that for a moment. In what universe are statements made to a chat group of 600 people, a chat group that includes journalists, without any explicit rules like Chatham House rules governing what is or isn't on or off the record, in what universe are such statements not eligible for public reporting and scrutiny? As for the activists who posted names online, our understanding is that this was done to enable those who read the chats to match names in the thread to real people. And to our understanding, no non-public information was shared by anyone. They reported what was said and identified those who said it. Now, we accept that the vast majority of texts in that chat group were innocuous. So in a better world, the identities of participants who had nothing to do with any conspiracy against fellow Australians would have been kept entirely out of the story. We also accept that had Ms. Frost been more careful and more selective about what she shared, and or had the journalist with whom she shared those texts done the same, then much needless harassment and trauma for innocent people would have been avoided. Fine. That's a legitimate critique. But let's get serious for a moment. I can personally testify that private information is mishandled every single day in Australia. sometimes with catastrophic consequences.
There are warnings tonight that lives will be destroyed.
The hackers releasing details of personal information.
For 5.7 million travellers,
more than 130,000 Australian Telstra customers have had their personal information made public.
Qantas failed to take reasonable action. Has been very tight-lipped.
I am taking this seriously and will continue to take this seriously.
The same forum as the Optus customer data last week.
The Medibank CEO today said we unreservedly apologise to our customers.
None of these executives was ever subjected to the kind of malevolent, mendacious, and frankly dangerous vilification and abuse that Ms. Frost experienced. None. Despite the fact that these are all leaders of world-class organizations that collectively spend probably hundreds of millions of dollars every year on compliance, data security, mandatory training, testing, systems, the works. I've got no idea what kind of mandatory training in data protection and privacy Ms. Frost has received over the course of her career as a New York Times journalist, but I'm fairly certain it would be nothing compared to what anyone who works at a world-class telco or health insurer would undergo every single year. Unlike the world's most moral KC, however, Ms. Frost, 32 years old, was courageous enough and dignified enough to acknowledge her mistakes, explain her intentions, and apologize for their unintended consequences. And unlike Lawyers for Israel, the harm that was done was not intentional. She did not seek to hide behind other people or the shield of court-imposed anonymity. Yet a political and legal system which seemed so concerned about the safety of the world's most moral KC does not appear to have even been aware of what happened to Ms. Frost. So we thought we'd tell you. Google the name Natasha Frost. You'll be amazed at what you find. There are entire Reddit threads dedicated to articulating vicious hatred towards her. You can find personal information about her, terrifying calls for retribution, including glib talk of assassination from Jewish people all over the world.
Doxxing is commonly understood to mean the malicious publication of personal or private details without the consent of the person concerned.
And remember, Natasha Frost is herself Jewish. So why is rage directed against her so much more febrile than that directed against these multi-million-dollar CEOs? It's because most accounts of Ms. Frost's story paint her as a Jew hater who assembled lists of Jews for persecution, as if they were crypto-Jews hiding from the Inquisition. There's no mention of the behavior Ms. Frost believed should be a matter of public interest. No reason for someone outside of Australia to know that she was actually engaged in whistleblowing. There's no mention of her Jewish identity or the Jewish identity of the activists who were actually responsible for assembling and publicizing the texts and names. Read a typical story about Natasha Frost, either in Australia or around the world, and the image you get is of some modern Irma Greza hunting Jews.
Monsieur Lattouf, are you aware of the nickname the people of France have given me?
Did they call you the Jew hunter?
Precisely.
Because I'm aware of what tremendous feats human beings are capable of once they abandon dignity.
Targeting of people because they happen to be Jewish is just completely unacceptable.
That, my friends, is slander. And it's the worst kind of slander. It's not politicians slinging insults at each other. It's punching down slander. Slander against people who can't clap back and who can't defend themselves. Whether it was intentional or simply convenient lack of curiosity, our Prime Minister lent the gravitas of his office to validate accusations by people of the caliber of Alex Rivkin, Jeremy Liebler, Sky News, and many others to accuse Natasha Frost of being comparable to a Nazi who targets and hunts Jews.
Having lists of Jews brings up very
vivid pictures.
That's got shocking historical echoes
Of what happened during the Holocaust, and that is that the Nazis made lists of Jews so that they could go and find them and then round them up, and we all know what happened.
Singling out Jewish businesses, singling out people, that's something strikes an echo for every single member of the Jewish community in Australia.
I don't know how a sitting Attorney General could say something so historically illiterate, so disrespectful to the memory of victims of genocide, and do so in service of a slander against a vulnerable young Jewish woman, young enough to be Mr. Dreyfus's daughter. With all due respect to everyone involved in this story, if we in Australia really have trouble understanding the difference between a list of people targeted for genocide because they are Jewish and a list of lawyers who conspire to punish someone for reporting on a genocide, if the difference between those two things is unfathomable simply because they both involve Jews, then we need to fundamentally rethink historical education in this country.
It's been pretty stressful. I've had hate mail, I've had social media abuse, accusing me of being, a genocidal right-wing extremist, which is probably the exact opposite of where I stand.
As a result of being placed on that list and doxxed, I've received a lot of vicious online harassment.
I felt quite isolated.
There's been assumption that somehow by being Jewish that I need to make a statement.
Last we left it, you did refuse to condemn.
Unreservedly condemn.
Do you condemn 9/11?
Will you now take the opportunity to condemn?
That's such a ridiculous It's a yes or no.
Or that I'm expected to, or a kind of collective guilt.
Well, can they really be excused for blame for what they've helped bring on themselves? Or am I being unfair? No, I don't think they can be.
There is a certain degree of complicity with many. Now, does that mean that they deserve to die, as she stated? No, of course not. But it's not the same thing as being innocent either.
I've reached out to certain friends to talk as well, and I've had very difficult conversations. I just asked them if they could say on social media they stand against antisemitism, but they won't do it. It seems to be fraught for them to put that out there, which is sad for me.
As people who have asked friends to take a stand against ethnic cleansing and the starvation of children, we know exactly how Ms. Gertler Gold must feel.
They won't do it. It seems to be fraught for them to put that out there, which is sad for me.
So we stand in solidarity with her against anti-Semitism and against all forms of racism, even though doing so means we face
consequences levied,
very big stick,
wielded to such impressive effect on the life of Natasha Frost and on many, many people in Australia and around the world.
Everything possible is done to make an example of this bad nigger so there won't be any more like him.
It started with being likened to a Nazi, which is a awful inversion of reality. And since then I've received swastikas, I've been called a cancer.
Reasonable people can disagree on the actions of Ms. Talia and Selim, or the actions of Ms. Ford, Ms. Lattouf, and many others. But no reasonable Australian can disagree that Ms. Frost has the same right to basic safety as anybody else, even if she isn't important to somebody powerful. Just like Zulun Moore, just like Antionette Lattouf, Sarah Schwartz, and millions of other Australians whom our political class doesn't seem to see.
I want to hold your hand when I say this. Democrats do not care.
She's talking about the US, of course. But many Australians suspect that the hypocrisy we've described in this video suggests that she could be talking about Labour in Australia as well, or Labour in Britain, and for the exact same reasons.
There is no relationship between what people want and what the Democratic Party is willing to advance, and there are no consequences for their lack of Democratic representation, because there's always the Republican Party, and they're always worse.
Sound familiar? This is why we say to our fellow Australians, ordinary Australians, Jewish Australians, Gentile Australians, white Australians, non-white Australians, our elites are not going to save us. Because when they talk about social cohesion, those words don't mean the same as what they mean for you and me.
It's time to bring peace
not division to our streets.
We do not need to be having our social fabric torn apart by hate.
They also don't want conflict brought here.
They're talking about cohesion in the party room, cohesion in the boardroom, cohesion at the political fundraising cocktail, cohesion in the chairman's lounge. When they talk about safety, they mean safety for men like the world's most moral KC and their friends. They don't mean safety for you and for me.
The only Jewish safety that's important is Zionist Jewish safety.
They don't give a shit. That's the kind of safety and cohesion we're going to have to secure ourselves. Because while all this was happening, the back-scratching, the favor swapping, the glazing, the breathtaking smallness of it all.
They have decided that they will keep their first-class cabins on the ship as it sinks.
That's got shocking historical echoes.
Women like Ms. Lattouf were quietly reminding us all of things that truly matter.
In December 2023, I shared a Human Rights Watch post, because Human Rights Watch found that Israel was using starvation as a weapon of war in Gaza. It is now June 2025, and Palestinian children are still being starved.
A lot of people in this country and in the West in general have spent the last year and a half feeling like they're losing their minds.
We see their images every day, emaciated, skeletal, scavenging through the rubble for scraps.
I grew up thinking that, America stood for justice and equality and fairness.
We say we care about freedom and justice and self-determination.
It was defending human rights. What's happening now in Israel in supporting that genocide is that the U.S. is trampling human rights.
This unspeakable suffering is not accidental, it is engineered. Deliberately starving and killing children is a war crime.
And yet, for some reason, we draw a line when it comes to Palestinians that accept them.
It's so at odds with what people want to believe about this country.
It is a glaring contradiction.
Today, the court has found that punishing someone for sharing facts about these war crimes is also illegal.
I don't think there's much difference between somebody getting killed by a bomb or getting killed by being thrown in a gas chamber. We're deliberately killing people. I mean, it's not a war, it's a slaughter. What does America stand for?
What are the values, what are the ideals that Israel still stands for?
So we'd both be free.
You can't say it stands for justice and peace and human rights. You gotta say it stands for ethnic cleansing.
And I think at a certain point there comes a kind of fracture.
It stands for slaughtering innocent people.
I'm never voting for another politician or another Democrat who takes money from the Israeli lobby again. You're not getting it. This isn't just an issue. It's the issue. Because how a politician speaks about and votes on the genocide in Gaza tells me everything I need to know about them and every other aspect of politics. That tells me that I can't trust them with anything else.
Something that every day for the last 9 months I've been asking myself.
If any politician going forward isn't pro-Palestinian liberation, then I want nothing to do with them. I don't trust them.
How is it that we can see this and then people with power in this country are lying to us about this reality that we can all see?
Our elites aren't going to save us. None of us. Not the Jewish among us, not the Gentiles among us, not the pro-Palestinian or pro-Israel among us, not the white, not the black, nor the increasing number of us who are something in between. Our elites don't have what we need for social cohesion at this moment. We illustrate that point with the final story of this series. The story of Joshua and Maggie May Moshe.
We just moved a lot of things out of here on Friday, so it's feeling very empty at the moment, which is quite sad.
They opened this high street business 7 years ago. Today, the shelves are empty. Their business closed. This Jewish couple, the victims of anti-Semitism. Joshua is also a professional musician. Following October 7, he joined a WhatsApp chat group that was set up to support the Jewish creative community. It soon had over 600 members. 3 months later, his personal details were made public.
You already know where this is going, don't you? The part of the story that Sky and Mr. Frydenberg leave out is going to turn out to be just as important, if not more important, than the part they leave in. Because just as with the story of Deborah Conway, which we mentioned in another video, it wasn't only Joshua Moshe's identity that was revealed in the doxxing.
Maggie and Josh, I noticed the sign there.
Yeah.
In a world you can be anything, be kind.
Joshua Moshe's Jewish identity was hardly a mystery to anyone. What was made public was his eagerness to do to 3 Australian authors, Matt Chung, Clementine Ford, and Nadine Shamali, that which Lawyers for Israel did to Ms. Lattouf. It is what Mr. Rivchin suggested all Australian Jews should be doing.
We're not getting pushed around anymore. We're now seeing consequences levied against those who take action and stand against our people. Across all sectors where Jews have influence, we need to bring that influence to bear. There needs to be a price to be paid for being an anti-Semite, and that's what has to be done now.
Mr. Moshe's special focus on Nadine Shamali and eagerness to inflict secret damage on her career caught people's attention. Is Nadine on SBS, she asked? It might be worth a deep dive into her past posts, as it's possible she's breached her contract. And when someone pointed out that her Instagram is private, he responded, "I'm on it."
We got horrible abusive messages. We had our store vandalized numerous times, and we also had death threats on our phone, not just against us, but really concerningly our child.
Naosis stands in solidarity with Josh and Maggie May Moshe. While we are highly critical of Mr. Moshe's actions, nobody, and we mean nobody, deserves to be threatened, their property vandalized, their family intimidated, and obviously no mother deserves to receive threats to her children. But just as in the case of Deborah Conway, Mr. Frydenberg's insistence that this is nothing more than a case of Jew hatred blinds him to the irony of the destructive behaviors and attitudes which led to this situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your strength.
As we watch this poignant and beautiful moment, we couldn't help but wonder if, after filming, Joshua and Maggie May Moshe ever saw Mr. Frydenberg again. We wonder if it has occurred to them that they, unlike Lawyers for Israel, never got to enjoy the privilege of an Australian judge issuing an extraordinary suppression order just for their protection.
The judge suppressed for 10 years the names and addresses of a group called Lawyers for Israel.
Did it occur to him that they've never in their life sent a text to the chair of the ABC? Or had the Attorney General of Australia rush legislation through Parliament just for them? Do they realize that unlike the remarkable and talented Alex Rivchin, who encouraged ordinary Australians like them to look upon fellow Australians as potential enemies, they don't hang out with billionaires. Nobody's painting Josh Moshe's portrait to hang in any national gallery. We wonder if they realize that in their fear, their vulnerability, their powerlessness, they actually might have more in common with Australians like Matt Chung, Clementine Ford, Nadine Shamali, and Antionette Lattouf than they do with the former Treasurer of Australia, Chairman of Goldman Sachs Australia, and possibly future Prime Minister of Australia. I wonder if they realize that maybe they have more in common with Jews like Natasha Frost than with Jews like the excellent and impressive Gillian Siegel and her ultra-high net worth friends and family, to say nothing of Jews like the world's most moral KC. Mostly, we wonder what would have happened if by some fluke, Ms. Ford and Shamali, whom we understand are friends, happened to walk into that store in Thornbury on the 6th of October 2023. What would Josh and Maggie May have thought of them? Would they have found Ms. Shamali funny? Would they have found Ms. Ford kind? Most importantly, What might they have talked about?
I come from a long lineage of proud Jewish people.
I have a personal connection to Palestine. My family is from the south of Lebanon. My mother's family lived in Palestine and was displaced during the Nakba. So we then became Lebanese naturalized citizens. So I have a personal connection to this particular thing.
That have stood up and faced and survived this and more for many thousands of years.
I don't have that familial or blood or cultural connection that you have, but I feel like I would be a traitor to my values to stay silent.
And I come from that lineage, and I am stronger than any of these people think.
I wasn't always vocal about Palestine. I used to be afraid. Very afraid. I grew up, don't talk about Palestine. Don't even say the word Palestine.
I just also really don't want to fucking leave here because I've put a lot of energy and time into this place and this business.
Obviously, we know that the economic backlash and the social and cultural backlash against people who've spoken up for Palestinian liberation has been swift and profound for decades again. You know, look at what happened to Vanessa Redgrave when she made a documentary about Palestine.
And to have it ripped away from us like this is just horrible and unfair and uncalled for, and it helps no one.
There's something about this moment in time in history where we have to all put aside our shit, you know, like this is not, if anyone in this last 6 months is still focusing on small shit, beef shit, stuff between people, there's something deeply wrong with us.
In case you haven't worked it out, we don't believe there is any reason for Australians like Josh and Maggie May Moshe, making music and minding the store in Thornbury, to have any reason to be enemies with Australians like Nadine Shamali or Clementine Ford. That doesn't mean they have to agree, it doesn't mean they have to be friends, but there was never any need to persuade Mr. Moshe that fellow Australians were such threats to the Jewish people they merited being the targets of the kind of campaign that was waged against Ms. Lattouf. And it's absolutely unclear to us why someone would put into Joshua Moshe's head the idea that he could do as lawyers for Israel do, when it should have been clear that he would never enjoy the privileges and safety that they do.
Remember that Captain Darling and I are behind you.
Unfortunately for Mr. Moshe, he is not a member of the Order of Australia.
The judge suppressed for 10 years the names and addresses of a group called Lawyers for Israel, who were allegedly behind the campaign of complaints against Lattouf.
About 35 miles behind.
No, most of us ain't. Not Nadine Shamali, not Clementine Ford, not Natasha Frost, not Sarah Schwartz, not Antionette Lattouf, and not Joshua and Maggie May Moshe.
It's a big club.
Whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or something else,
and you ain't in it.
Elites are different from you and me. We aren't saying race or religion don't matter.
The whole culture, whole industries are based on distracting people from what's important.
As many have pointed out, there were no Australian flags flown by the pro-Palestinians.
But don't let anyone distract you from the reality of your relationship with those in society who call the shots.
They even sang the Australian national anthem.
Warren Buffett famously said, if you're ever at a poker table and don't know who the patsy is, it's because it's you.
They don't give a shit.
You're the patsy.
Is it your sense there's anything the president can do now to get his supporters to move off of the Epstein issue?
What Buffett said about poker is true in politics and in life. Too many of us learn that the hard way.
They're probably all sexually blackmailed.
You know, again, this is a distraction. We have major issues.
As Maggie was getting ready to finally close her family business, a passerby gave her the finger. The young mother was at breaking point.
It was a Assange court who said, never let anyone tell you who your enemy is.
We're not getting pushed around anymore. We're now seeing consequences levied against those who take action and stand against our people.
Andrew Cuomo went into a synagogue in this race and called me and Zoran and the black speaker of the city council anti-Semitic.
They don't give a shit.
Fairly highly educated class of Jewish city dwellers, and most of them rent.
You have people that are in control of large groups of people that convince these people that these other large groups of people that they don't even know are their enemies.
There's a class divide among Jews.
The enemies are the ones who are telling you that the students protesting for peace, protesting against a genocide,
They are happy to use us as pawns for their own political purposes.
Why do you call yourselves the Jewish Council of Australia?
The only Jewish safety that's important is Zionist Jewish safety.
You're emotionally damaged, Jewishly.
the ones telling you that these people are your enemy are the real enemies.
Don't for it.
Thank you.
Because elites are different from you and me, and it doesn't matter if we share the same religion. Ordinary Catholics learned that the hard way when they confronted the reality of institutional leadership that appeared more dedicated to protecting each other than the safety of their own children. Josh and Maggie May, we dare say, learned that the hard way when they realized the privileges enjoyed by leaders are not privileges that they share as well, even if they share the same religion.
You can never whip these boys if you don't keep you and them separate. I found that out in Birmingham. You've got to keep the white and the black separate.
That's Birmingham Sheriff and Alabama candidate for Governor Eugene Bull Connor, explaining in remarkably lucid prose for someone with just a high school degree the principle of divide et impera. Divide and rule, as Julius Caesar put it.
Empires divide to rule.
It's the way power has worked in human history since the dawn of civilization. You might even call it the world's second oldest profession, because civilization didn't exist before divide et impera.
I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. In Birmingham, they love to go now.
That's George Wallace running for governor against, it turns out, Bull Connor, giving the speech that made him the face of segregation and earned him a place in this timeless Skinnerd anthem. But what people didn't realize when he said that in 1963, nor during his 4 runs for president, nor did Lynyrd Skynyrd when they wrote that song in 1973, was that he was bullshitting them. Wallace started his career contemptuous of segregation. He viewed it as a relic of the South's racist backward past. Then he lost a race to a bigot and vowed never to be, quote, out-segged again. That was his famous expression. And so he adopted the mantle of segregation like a flag. However, by 1973, when Skynyrd wrote this song,
all of a sudden, he had an epiphany.
Times were changing. He came out to run for governor once again. He won with crucial black support. Blacks had acquired political power. Now he needed them.
I made a mistake, and that's all pay in the past, and I'm sorry that I did that because it gave the wrong opinion of the kind of man that I was. Only the good Lord knows whether or not he was sincere.
I've got my suspicions.
Firm to the very end. Keep Ulster out of the south of Ireland. No! No!
Another political leader who once personified racial division when I was a young man was this man, Ian Paisley, stubborn defender of the system in which men like Martin McGuinness and Bobby Sands grew up. Who knows what they might have become if they weren't born into a world that made them terrorists.
I want you to start treating these people for what they are, for it is in the prisons that we will break the back of the IRA.
And then, just as with segregation, the world changed. We all lost patience with the system Paisley defended. And suddenly, after the Good Friday Accords, Turns out Paisley says he never believed in the system he symbolized after all. He and McGuinness got along so well they became known in Ireland as the Chuckle Brothers. In this 2014 interview with the BBC, he made this astonishing confession.
Places like Derry and Fermanagh, where there were nationalist majorities, the council was still controlled by unionists numerically. Was that fair?
No.
One of the things that was really a revelation for me, actually, in researching the book, was to realize how much Protestant discourse in Northern Ireland.
In Dungannon in 1963, there were over 300 families on the waiting list for a house, and no Catholic had been allocated a permanent house for 34 years. How unacceptable was that?
Unacceptable at all. So it wasn't justice at all.
Described Catholic Ireland in ways that are so similar to the way that I remember white South Africans describing Africa and the way that so many Jews describe the Middle East.
There should be, but that's the way it was. The whole system was wrong.
Ian Paisley, the Protestant leader, called the Good Friday Agreement, which gave Catholics political equality, he called it a prelude to genocide.
If you vote down democracy, you're responsible for bringing in anarchy. And they brought in anarchy, and they set family against family and friend against friend.
I'm glad he finally got there, but boy, would the world have been different if he fessed up sooner than he did.
The only way you was ever going to get those Hindus to stop killing them Islams.
It's actually Catholics fighting Protestants.
Whatever.
And yes, we are telling you these stories because we believe, just as Meinert believes, that they are all just different riffs on the same game. A game that powerful people have been playing on the powerless since the dawn of civilization, when the first people we call emperors or kings convinced the rest of us to divide ourselves into native and foreigner, foreman and slave, field hand and house servant, all the while keeping us so suspicious and resentful of each other that we never worked out how all of us were being played.
Most politicians, they are selling their ideology in order to survive in power.
Just remember that when someone tells you to fear your neighbor or mistrust your neighbor.
Anti-Semitism may be ingrained in the cultural fabric of certain segments of our society.
Or hate your neighbor.
We've got people in our country who are calling Australia home when they don't have Australia in their heart.
It may not be because of the racist or bad ideas that they have in their head.
We've got people in our country who hate our country.
It may simply be the contempt they have for the ideas they believe are in yours.
Some really disturbing displays at the Oscars this year. We had Jewish director Jonathan Glazer use his acceptance speech to essentially renounce his Judaism.
They don't care about whether it's true or not.
Have our own political leaders and our own corporate media, have they not been stoking all these divisions all these years?
In other words, they may just be bullshitting you.
Surely, in the modern world, in modern Australia, we're better than that.
It was Assange who said, never let anyone tell you who your enemy is.
There is one lesson we all desperately need to hear at this moment. That's it.
Don't let them tell you that people who are protesting a genocide are your enemy.
Don't ever forget this, my fellow Australians. Whatever side of this or that debate you might be on.
Thousands, tens of thousands, but probably hundreds of thousands of people in the UK who have no love at all for the UK, who yet live there.
The enemies are the ones who are telling you that the students protesting for peace, protesting against a genocide, the ones telling you that these people are your enemy are the real enemies.
He was saying to white British people, not going to get your country back, and actually hate Indigenous British people, hate white Indigenous British people.
It's the same people that are calling for more bombs being sent to Israel, calling for war against Iran, calling for war against China.
I mean, the same people who are now pushing for an attack on Iran were pushing for the attack against Saddam Hussein.
It's absolutely shocking to see these deaths. It's absolutely shocking.
Remember that Captain Darling and I are behind you.
The judge suppressed for 10 years the names and addresses of a group called Lawyers for Israel.
About 35 miles behind.
Or fill sandbags, or walk you through physical therapy.
The world has gone nuts with climate change exaggeration, alarmism, and hysteria.
Does climate change cause these fires? No.
Elites don't owe us anything.
They don't give a shit.
When are we going to wake up and stop using this as an excuse to justify the climate change hoax?
Just because somebody tells you something to win your support,
Bill Shorten wants to end the weekend,
doesn't mean they have to hold the hose if things don't go as they promised.
They stole a few elections, still we the people won. We voted out corruption, big corporations. We voted for an end to war and new direction. And we ain't gonna stop now till the job is done.
Whatever influences the decisions they make today, the consequences will be borne by all of us in the future. All of us together, neighbors, classmates, peers at work. When the floodwaters are rising, nobody cares who wears a kippah or who wears a hijab. Nobody ever asks in a bushfire or a flood. Remember that the next time someone tells you to distrust your fellow Australian, especially if it's a talking head on television or a politician.
We've got people in our country who hate our country.
Especially if the person telling you that is in a house you'll never afford, a neighborhood you'll never visit, hangs out in clubs where you'll never belong, or has a bank account you just can't wrap your head around. Remember who is like you and who is not.
Come on, all good workers.
The judge suppressed for 10 years the names and addresses of a group called Lawyers for Israel. If their identities were known, they would be subject to vilification and harassment.
So which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on?
It might feel far, far away, but we all have skin in this game.
We are going to be living globally with the consequences of the trampling of these norms for a long time, I'm afraid.
If I can give myself the audacity as a daughter of a refugee who wasn't even born here to challenge the system.
The enemies are the ones who are making money off of selling 2,000-pound JDAMs to a racist ethno-state.
You can do it too.
They're the same people that called for the students to be deported and arrested and their speech rights be completely shut down.
So is this Israel's war, or is it in fact our war as well? It's the world's war. It's a civilized world's war. Hamas and their friends are Nazis, and we'll have to get rid of them. And the Israelis are doing a very good job in the beginning of that, but everyone's going to have to join in. We cannot live with these people.
Give yourself that confidence.
They're on the side of the rapists and the torturers and the killers and the kidnappers.
The funny thing is, us and the Palestinians, we have the same enemy. We're fighting the same fight.
Don't just comply. Don't just be comfortable.
And history, and this happened to people. It didn't happen to numbers. It didn't happen to just a large group, to large entities, but it happened to individuals.
Change doesn't happen when we're comfortable.
The West has spent decades creating this rules-based order, and it's finally been laid bare as a big sham. Those with power can do whatever they want.
You are still living with the consequences. How do you feel?
Extreme, guilt to think of all those men coming home off that green ramp and just dispersed into the world to fend for themselves makes me sick to my stomach.
Another one of our friends kind of came in, tripped over, and he unfortunately saw him say his last words. I was trying to find an entry wound, couldn't find an entry wound, but the exit wound, from my experiences, are always the worst. So unfortunately, I rolled my friend over, and looking into his chest, looking at his heart, and like I've got this scenario put in front of me, and I'm like, I've got to work now, you know. I remember when we were doing CPR, I was just getting mouthful of blood and spew, and over you, on me, in my mouth, and you know that's what you're doing for the boys. You know, you do anything to try and keep them alive, and just getting a nasopharyngeal out, just to try and give some kind of airway as we're walking. I remember just
Cam had died because he tried to draw their gunfire for us to achieve break it.
All forms of racism are interconnected, and what this means in terms of government responses is that instead of law and order approaches, we support those that oppose all forms of racism, which don't create hierarchies of racism and which target systemic and structural discrimination. The Jewish Council is deeply concerned about rises in antisemitism in Australia. The only way for us to effectively fight antisemitism is by working in partnership with other groups also facing bigotry and discrimination.
It is incredibly powerful to see so many young people waking up, asking questions, young and old people.
The Empire did nothing wrong.
Asda will graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering, Molecular and Cellular Engineering, and a minor in Resistance to Genocide.
The liberal media is not going to tell you that.
You may not know this, but Asda is USC's 2024 valedictorian.
Shalom Aleichem ve'al
Strength that I have, world didn't give it to me.
Salam, salam.
The world didn't give it, the world didn't take it away.
It was Assange who said, never let anyone tell you who your enemy is. Don't let them tell you that people who are protesting a genocide are your enemy.
We've got people in our country who hate our country. Thank you.
Salam, salam, salam. Hallelujah, kol haolam. Salam, salam. Shalom aleinu, oh Shalom aleinu, Shalom aleinu.